Good evening and assalamu alaikum. It's been quite some time that I have made it to this chair and to this office for a live stream. It's been quite a busy period, but the developments over the past few days made it a necessity for me to come and talk about the ceasefire, but also put it in the context of the ongoing genocide. Just before I started this session, the news came out of Israel and the Netanyahu government that the agreement have been finalized from the Israeli side, and that there will be a full cabinet meeting to adopt and to agree and to vote on this ceasefire agreement, where it actually is split into three separate stages for the agreement to actually take shape. There's also indication, I don't know how valid or not, that Ben Gavir's party, which controls about six seats in the parliament, that he is actually threatening to resign and possibly pull his party from the Israeli coalition government. I'm not sure whether he will carry forth. I think it's more of a threat than possibly it to be materialized. Now, the opposition within the Knesset, the leader of the opposition, Yair Lapid, said that he will actually vote to support the Netanyahu's coalition government. So if Smotrich or Ben Gavir, and Smotrich's party also controls about 7 seats, if they decide not to vote for this agreement, that the opposition led by Yair Lapid, who they control about 24 seats, so between the existing cluster of parties, including possibly Shas, that the Israeli government and the Knesset will actually agree and approve this agreement that has been negotiated. And as far as the indication yesterday from the Doha press conference, that the agreement was finalized and agreed to, but Netanyahu, the last minute, attempted to try to get possibly derail the agreement, asking for some additional conditions, which, interestingly enough, the indication from the news is that Hamas immediately agreed to it, with also asking for a similar type of concession on the Israeli side. So this is, as we are speaking today, the facts is the following: that the agreement for a ceasefire has been reached between the representative of Hamas and the Israeli government through the intermediary of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. The Israelis, led by Netanyahu, attempted to delay and possibly derail the agreement, but the reality is the agreement has been reached for a ceasefire. Stage 1 would be for 42 days, and in the 42 days there will be 33 Israeli prisoners that will be released, and in response, or the Israeli side will release close to 2,000 Palestinian, both from those who have served long-term life sentences, but also about 1,000 of those who have just been arrested or imprisoned from Gaza. Now, just to step back a little bit on here. Now, Netanyahu have actually committed, and this again is my own analysis. I'm not speaking for any organization or group, but Netanyahu really committed three major error in or strategic mistakes in this. One, this is the same agreement that was on the table from April, May, and he decided actually not to accept and not to go along with this agreement. And as such, the agreement that was there with the same type of topography at a time where the Israeli public was actually in support of the war. Some pollings indicated overwhelming majority of the Israeli society was in agreement, and Israel's position was still favorable. This is before even the ICJ have issued its ruling as well. So he was in a better position politically, strategically, domestically. Also, the United States was totally behind it. The Biden administration, the State Department, Blinken, European leadership. So delaying and not actually going through the agreement in April, May, came back to actually uh, uh, to bite and weaken Netanyahu's position at this time. The second strategic mistake is this idea that, which was the general's idea, the Israeli general's idea, to actually pursue the total ethnic cleansing of northern Gaza with the hope of cementing control over the northern Gaza. It was a strategy built on this total attempt for achieving military victory by all means at a time where Israel's claims of military success in various fronts were actually met with, if not total failure, met with a clear challenges to that, because again, the Israeli Defense Force and the military was just engaging in random violence, wanton violence, destroying buildings, targeting civilians, and death and destruction. But as far as achieving a decisive military victory was nowhere to be had, and in essence, increasing the number of deaths of civilian population, claiming of civilians being human shields, attacking hospitals, attacking schools, claiming that UNRWA is responsible. All this, in essence, just covered a failure above failure. And this last piece of agreeing to the general's campaign in northern Gaza was a second strategic mistake that Netanyahu fell into in this period. The third, which is very, very important, is that Netanyahu hitched his wagon on thinking that the arrival of Trump in the White House will give him a carte blanche to continue the violence and continue the campaign on Gaza. And if the news, as we are hearing it, that literally it's Trump that twisted Netanyahu's arm. His envoy, Steve Witkoff, that was on participating in the negotiations, literally delivered Trump's message to Netanyahu. And just earlier, The Guardian have said that Trump said to Netanyahu, it's hostages in exchange of ceasefire now. So literally delivering a very short message to Netanyahu, which basically also exposes Biden, Blinken, the U.S. State Department, the U.S. leadership. If anything, it demonstrates that the United States does have leverage over Netanyahu, if not actually total leverage, and can bring an end to Israel's impunity or Israel's operations at any given time. The fact that Biden resisted pressuring Netanyahu throughout the 15-month, 469 days, and also the State Department, Blinken, making sure to suppress the reports that were coming of starvation in Gaza, suppressing reports of war crimes being committed, shielding the Israeli government and Netanyahu in all the settings. This is actually it's a total failure of Biden, and Trump can actually come into the White House making the claim, the rightful claim, and I say it's a factual claim, factual statement that Biden continued to drag his feet and, in essence, was weak in leadership vis-a-vis Netanyahu, while Trump, in essence, made the decision to end the war. And he said again last week that if the agreement is not reached, the ceasefire is not reached, and the hostages and the prisoners are not released, that all hell will break loose. Whether that is a statement, a rhetorical statement, or something else, is we could see that Trump, in essence, decided that it is not in his best interest to walk into the White House this coming week, where the war in the Middle East and the war in Gaza continued. He wanted to come in with hostilities and the war coming to an end, which also points that his possible strategy likewise will be similar in relations to the Ukraine, which we will wait and see. Now, having said this, Biden and Blinken and Kamala Harris will go down in history as the enablers of the genocide in Gaza. And we're still far, far away from coming into reckoning of the consequences of U.S. policy in relations to the Gaza war and in the consequences of presiding over a genocide, supporting the genocide militarily without the U.S. weapons, without the continued supply of U.S. weapons to Israel. Israel would have been in a very difficult positions to sustain this onslaught on Gaza, destroying almost 80% of the buildings that are there, causing the death. Again, the numbers of deaths in Gaza and those who were murdered by the Israeli military, we see the report of 47,000. But I will go back to the Lancet report of back in June, which says that for every direct death, there is 4 indirect deaths that occurs. And at the time, they actually put the number at 186,000 Palestinians been murdered by the Israeli military machine in really an outright revenge, callous revenge, complete disregard to human rights, complete disregard to international law, the Fourth Geneva Convention, and every aspect of whatever we have as the post-World War II international order. So we should actually think of the estimate closer to 200,000+ right now, if not actually even closer to 250,000 Palestinians in Gaza that have been murdered. And this was on Biden's watch, his participation, his total partnership, and Blinken. And this also, Harris bears responsibility because she did not break away from Biden on a number of issues, not only on the genocide and the support of Israel, but also on the economy, on the inflation. When she was asked, would she do anything different and would she break away and have a different policy, she actually was silent and basically supported Biden all along. There was just a poll that just came out yesterday, which says that from those who did not go out to vote for the general election, this past election in November, for those who did not come out, because in essence, large segment of the Democratic Party did not actually come out to vote, and that's why Trump won. 29% said that Gaza was a primary reason for them not to go out and vote. 24% said the economy. So literally Gaza cost Harris the presidency, cost the Democrats the presidency, cost the Democrats the White House, and also caused the Democrats to lose the Congress and the Senate. So, in essence, you could say that genocide, in this sense, was the cause and the reason for the Democratic losses. And this is not to say that the Democrats are trusted on the Palestine or in support of Palestinian rights. Again, we could talk about the minority leaders, Hakeem Jeffries, who received $750,000 from AIPAC, and some of the top Democrats they receive considerable support from AIPAC. So we're still far away from still addressing the many different ways that Israel actually plays in the U.S. domestic political landscape to influence the political machineries to continue to support Israel unconditionally. So that's in terms of the Trump actually pushed the ceasefire forward. Biden and Blinken and his administration failed to do much of anything. In their record, their administration will have a genocide on their record. Now, on the overall strategic landscape in the region, and this is again, I listened to a number of commentators in terms of how to assess what happened in relations to this war. The essence that we are seeing is that it points to Israel losing the war in this context, because Israel was unable to achieve, if we take Netanyahu's public statements about what this war was about, what we actually are clearly seeing that none of these goals that were specifically put forth by Netanyahu, these are the public ones. We are not privy yet to the private possible strategic goals that Israel had. We say that from all indications, including Israeli commentators in the press, in the TV, and so on, saying that Israel have lost the war and Netanyahu have lost the war in here because none of these expressed goals have been achieved. So in essence, we could say that an outcome of this is that Israel have always maintained a standing of deterrence in the region, that it is the regional hegemon, that not only that it is able to inflict pain, but nobody actually has the possibility of breaking this standing deterrence that Israel. And I would say that as a consequence of this revengeful response from Israel, that it's actually the deterrence have completely collapsed. Now, often people would say that the death and destructions that have been visited on the Palestinians is overwhelming, and indeed is overwhelming. But we should not confuse the ability of a major military, advanced military with the support of the United States, Western Europe, Germany, France, the UK, which has provided almost all infrastructure, intelligence, surveillance, flights, as well as the support and we see direct cooperation of regional Arab states, that under all these circumstances, Israel was unable to achieve its goals that were stated by Netanyahu at the onset of this war. So strategically, Israel have lost the war. This is what Israeli politicians are saying. This is what the Israeli press is indicating. Interestingly enough, Smotrich is wanting that he will vote for this on the condition that Israel will actually go back to the war in the second stage, meaning that the hostage exchange with the hostage prisoner exchange will occur, and then after that, that the war will actually commence. I don't know whether that will be something that the Israeli government will agree upon. I do think from the Trump administration, they are going to offer Netanyahu incentives. One of the reports came that the Trump administration and many of those who are coming with Trump into the White House are hawks. They are also deeply, deeply committed to Zionism in Israel. Some of them come from Christian Zionism as well, and we saw some of those discussion in the confirmation hearing of Hatzaf, the Secretary of Defense. The question, "Are you a Christian Zionist?" And in essence, he expressed his commitment to Israel. I think Hatzaf is more committed to a crusading mindset, and he views himself within the realm of a crusade. I don't know if we could classify him to be a Christian Zionist, or is a evangelical millenarian worldview. So that's again a debate among individuals who assess where he's at. But that's where I would say that the Trump administration, those who are coming, are heavily, heavily committed to Israel. Some of these incentives that I expect. One, there's the discussion of annexation of Area A and B in the West Bank. The discussions, even during the election campaign, this notion that Israel needs to expand its territory. And this might also attach to the land grab that occurred. About 50,000 acres of land have been taken by the settlers in the West Bank. There's an expanding of Israeli settlers in the West Bank. As we were focusing on Gaza, the West Bank was facing a massive land grab by the settlers. Even yesterday, as the news of the ceasefire came about, we saw actually settlers attacking various parts of the West Bank. And I think there is, at least if not an immediate concession by Trump to possibly issue an executive order to recognize the annexation of a large swath of lands in Area A and in Area B and Area C. And for those who are not familiar with the West Bank, per Oslo Agreement that was signed in 1993, and then the Ware River Agreement that was signed, the West Bank was divided into three different areas: Area A, Area B, and Area C. Area A is, you could actually say, it's mostly where the Palestinian population are concentrated or where the Palestinian cities are. In Area A, the Palestinian Authority, right, which I see it today as a security contractor for Israel, in the same way that Chief Buthelezi in South Africa was implementing the apartheid regime, and the ANC was basically being pushed and persecuted by the apartheid regime in South Africa. But Area A is subject to Palestinian Authority, civilian and security, right? Area B, Palestinians have civilian control oversight, but security is in the hands of Israel, and there's some shared security responsibility. Area C, which is the larger part of the West Bank, Israel maintained total control of security as well as administration. And throughout, from 1993, the signing of Oslo Agreement, all the way up to the present, there's been a systematic, almost a de facto annexation of Area C and Area B encroachment on Area B. So what Trump have signaled, as well as his rhetoric, that he will be ready to recognize the annexation of Area B and Area C. This is also interesting, is Miriam Adelson, who is one of the major contributor to the Trump campaign. Miriam Adelson, she is Sheldon Adelson's wife. She is a major donor, and it actually funds many of the Zionist type of defamations Breitbart. She's uh, providing a birthright, funding. She provided about 100 million to Trump campaign, and with the condition attached to it that if Trump is elected, that she would expect a payback in the sense of the annexation of Area B and Area C. So that's, I would say, is one real incentive that Trump is going to be putting forth in a short period to cajole as well as reward Netanyahu for whatever. We're rewarding a genocidal prime minister that has been charged with genocide, where actually the United States is going to reward them with an incentive of annexation of the West Bank, Area B and Area C. Now, in addition to this, I think that since Israel have grabbed large swath of lands in Syria, almost 20 miles away from Damascus, I think also the Trump administration, with the type of personalities and the type of leadership that are coming into the White House with this administration, I think they will actually begin to look the other way and allow Israel prolonged control, if not actually consider these as buffer regions or buffer areas, with the key ingredient in there, access to the water from the areas that came under, or as areas that Israel have taken control, because many of the water reservoirs that comes from this region is actually very, very important. I compare it to, if you think of California and the Sierra Mountains, this is the area of that you have Jabal al-Sheikh, which is a snow-capped mountain. Many of the rivers in Lebanon, Jordan River, many of the water system that feeds into Syria actually comes from this region. When you actually tell people that Lebanon have a ski resorts and people go skiing, people don't have the conceptualization, because they have actually been suckled on Hollywood idea and vision of this region. They only see deserts, and every once in a while they see camel, not the smoke, but camels as the imagery that have continued to be replicated and reproduced throughout the generations in Hollywood. So I would also see Trump and his administration allowing Israel an expanded footprint in those territories that have been taken by Israel when the Assad regime collapsed just in this past month. The other element also connected is that there is a report that the United States is going to remove the sanctions on Pegasus. Now, for those who don't know Pegasus is a software that is used by intelligence services, including predominantly Israeli-produced intelligence software that was used in the Khashoggi murder, Saudi Arabia's Khashoggi murder in the Saudi consulate in Turkey. And as a result of this, there were sanctions that were imposed on Pegasus, because it turned out that the information from some of the phones from Khashoggi's phone, as well as some of the political activists, Saudi political activists outside the country in Canada and so on, that the Israelis sold this Pegasus software to the Saudis to access this information. And also similarly, we found out that the Pegasus was used to spy at State Department and White House personnel, and the German Chancellor at the time, Merkel, and also Boris Johnson in the UK. So there was an imposition of a sanction on Pegasus, which have an impact on Mossad's operations, on intelligence operations, on the ability to actually interfere. So Trump is going to actually remove this sanctions, which means that the intelligence services and the Mossad Operations will be back in business. Not that they were out of business, but at least there isn't this sanctions that are there. The third element will be that Trump will also remove the sanctions that have been imposed on some of the settlers, individual settlers, and also impositions of sanctions on some of the products that were coming from the settlements into the United States. So that's we also see this will be something that Trump will reward Netanyahu as a result of this agreement. The last part of what Trump is putting forth with Netanyahu is a promise that he will build upon the Abraham Accords, and we could see this in the language that has been used. And there is considerable work that has been underway to bring Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords. And I would say that the Saudi Arabia's engagement with the Abraham Accords, there was considerable soft diplomacy to break the psychological barriers. There's been the leadership of the Muslim League that has been engaged in these faith washing and faith engagement to normalize relations. There has been delegations that came to visit Saudi Arabia, using also sports, entertainment as a vehicle to try to build the bridge between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And this is seen by Trump and also possibly as Netanyahu as the way to isolate the Palestinians and to try to transform the regions away from its topography. Now, if anything, what happened in Gaza and what is taking place inside Palestine demonstrates for all that no matter what normalization strategy, no matter how much you expand the Abraham Accords, so far you have United Arab Emirates engaged in it, Oman, Bahrain, Morocco, Jordan, Egypt, Mauritania. All these is not a substitute for the fact that Palestinians demand and will receive their freedom. And there is no substitute for actually ending the settler colonial project that has been unfolding on the Palestinian lands for the past 100 years. You could have as many conferences, Abraham Accords conferences. You could build the tallest building. You could facilitate all these what you call encounters, a golf tournament. The fastest horse, the fastest car, all these are fictitious attempt to bypass the Palestinians. What is fundamental in here is the Palestinians' desire for freedom. It cannot be restrained. The desire for the Palestinians to achieve control over their land and sovereignty over land cannot be substituted by any type of what I call bypassing through bilateral Abraham Accord normalization, by attempt to create a fictitious notion of normal without actually having to address the immediate Palestinian needs that are there. So I think that's on the ceasefire and this consideration that are there. Now, lastly, I want to address where do we go from here in relations to still prosecuting the genocide. And I do think that we still, no matter what the developments on the ground, we still have to actually work to bring those who have carried out the genocide to face justice. We still have to actually document what has taken place. And I do think in the immediate period, as the ceasefire takes hold, which begins on Sunday, that we have to actually almost very quickly move into documenting and mapping and verifying every narrative and every story and every element that have taken place. We need to document the number of people who have died, and we by crossing the civil records, by crossing the family records, on to document every person who have been killed, to be documented, their story, their name, their history, their narrative. These are not, they're not numbers. We're not numbers, and these have to be actually immediately done, and it should be task one. Second is to document all of the horrific cases of rape, of torture, of abuse, of every type of violations that have occurred during this period. And I do think that for us who are engaged in both research, engaged in civil society, it is very, very, very critical to document the record and to have it, because genocide prosecution takes a long time. It's not only a matter of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It takes a long period of time. But the fact today is that we have to actually be ready to actually document those cases and make it possible for us, because that's going to be the file, or the multiple files, the many files that we need to actually engage. Now, third, we also need to continue to work to bring those responsible who were complicit in the genocide. So the fact that Biden is not in the White House, Blinken is not in the White House, Miller, all these individuals, they should be actually taken to task, and they should be actually completely exposed in their complicity. So that work also has to be done in order to bring those complicit to justice. And fourth in here, relative to us in all aspects of civil society, we need still to pursue those resolutions that will actually identify the companies that have participated, that provided the supplies, the materials, and so on to carry on the genocide. And that's also a work that has to take place. And also, in this sense, the reaffirming our commitment to PDS, especially at the universities, especially at the investments, especially in areas where that PDS still have an impact. Because again, the ceasefire does not mean an end of the genocide of the Palestinians, because genocide is not only the actual physical death of an individual, it's actually making life completely unlivable, to destroy in whole or in part, to actually erase the cultural specificity of the population, to bring about conditions that will cause their death or their elimination. We have to speak about the educational infrastructure and how to respond to a fact that all of the universities have been destroyed, and how to rebuild academically while still people are living intense in the cold. I know that there will be an immediate supply of humanitarian aid, so that's very positive. And before I came, I was looking at the news out of Egypt, where they're preparing for a massive flow of humanitarian aid shipment to come in. The agreement says for 600 trucks of humanitarian aid to come in, and 50 fuel trucks to come in, and those will just be to sustain the population, because this is the population that actually the United States State Department reports that actually starvation was taking place. So the aid has to come in a very rapid way, but the sustainability and rebuilding and all that will take many years. So we're optimistic that for the ceasefire, that this is a very positive step, but there's a lot of work ahead of us. The Palestinians, again, for 469 days, have faced the onslaught of a military machine like never before. It's one of the strongest militaries in the region, but also supported by the superpower, the United States, supported by Germany, supported by the UK, France, and so on, as well as the Arab countries. So the fact that we're now talking about a ceasefire and the Palestinian population in Gaza is breathing, rightly so, for hope that this will bring some relief, even though yesterday the Israeli government or the Israeli military attacked other parts of Gaza, killing 81 Palestinians. But we're still hopeful that this will bring some ease to the suffering that has been unfolded. Now, I don't know whether Netanyahu is going to survive this agreement or not. I know that he's still facing corruption charges inside Israel. We'll see whether the fractured nature of his coalition will survive. But I do think that if there is an actual commission of inquiry, which I'm sure that the Israeli Knesset as well as the Israeli public will demand such an inquiry, and if it happens, I don't think that Netanyahu will survive, because he built his career on being the hawk, the protector, that his notions of security was utmost, and this actually was the maximum failure for the security apparatus that Israel have always built itself to be. So we are in a very, very rapidly changing region, rapidly changing circumstances inside Palestine, but rapidly changing circumstances across the region. And I did not address the changes in Syria, the circumstances in Lebanon, the possible development with Iran, the development. I did address the possible expansion of the Abraham Accord. I did not touch on Yemen. All these are still, it's a region that is in a complete flux. And I don't think even, I spoke about Trump's contribution. Again, Trump can have an impact as the US is the major superpower, but it is not an easy fix for US foreign policy. I think also the United States have lost considerable standing. Even its own foreign policy is in shambles, considering the development that have taken place. So within a few weeks, we'll begin to deal with Trump. And domestically here in the United States, there will be, again, the effort to try to silence the Palestinian voices, to silence those who are critical of U.S. foreign policy, whether it's the university or across civil society. But that's a different conversation for a different time. And literally, we look forward to continue to be active, to continue to speak, to continue to try to transform to transform the opinions, the public opinions about the circumstances that are befalling the Palestinians as a direct outcome of U.S. wrong-headed foreign policy in cooperations with Israel, with AIPAC, and all of those that have made the disaster that unfolds in there. Now, I cannot end without actually saying the British have their hand. Again, we're still dealing with the British policy. This is the Balfour Declaration. This is the British and the French Sykes-Picot Agreement. And whatever conflict you see in the region, it is still the outcome of World War I and the divisions and the boundaries, the structures, the double crossing, the machinations that have occurred, and that has continued. So we're literally dealing with almost 120 years, or 100, actually from 1917, almost 110 years of this consequences of the First World War, and the British are still involved as we speak today. So again, their base in Cyprus was very critical for all kinds of surveillance, intelligence. Also, they participated in providing an air cover for Israel during their engagement with Iran, as well as their engagement with Hezbollah. So the British are not sitting and enjoying just what you call the Premier League and soccer. They actually are still beholden to their colonial legacy and continue to have the colonial present in the region in ways that will have to still to be investigated, and we'll leave it up to people in the UK to take their government to task for their complicity and their engagement in the genocide. So thank you for being. I know that you could have comments. If you have any comments or any question, I'll be more than happy maybe for a few minutes to see if you have any. I will uh, take a look at it. I know Javed says we can't trust this bunch. 100% we can't trust this bunch, but politics is not about only trust. It's about actually having your political goals and political process to understand how to shift and change the political landscape. The Democrats and Republicans have been beholden more to APAC than anything else. And what we need to work is to change this reality for us and for, again, domestically as well as internationally. So thank you for being, and if make sure to share it if you can, and hopefully we'll see you again in the various events, lectures, talks. We'll be back teaching next week. So for those who will be in the classroom, look forward to seeing you in the class, and we'll deal with the various issues that arises, and hopefully we'll see everyone. Okay, assalamu alaikum, and good to have you all with me today.